Hey everybody. Um today what I want to kind of discuss is the value of reflection and also the value of conviction. So there have been a lot of times, and I'm sure I've said this more than once, but there's been several times as of late where while I'm disciplining one of my children, or I'm by disciplining, I'm referring to having a conversation, correcting them, it's probably the better word, correcting them for something that they did, something that they said, the way that they reacted. I'm often reminded of my own behaviors, right? The way that I might react to something, whether it be physically react or I might emotionally react, even spiritually react. And so, what I want to do is I want to kind of call out to the men that are listening or challenge you. Do you have the ability to reflect? Are you arrogant enough to not look back and wonder or even observe what you may not have done appropriately or the right way to respond? When I say appropriately, I'm referring to in context to the situation that you are reflecting on. So, for example, if I guess I'll just come out and kind of be transparent about the scenario. So, oftentimes, as I'm sure if you're just a parent or a father, you have heard or been in the similar situation where it's nighttime, your kids are almost asleep, and sure enough, one of them says something about needing water or having to go to the bathroom, or they want to talk and ask you questions. And I had my oldest the other night. I was tucking him and his younger brother in, and he said, "Dad," and I said, "Yeah, buddy." And he said, can I go downstairs and or can I come down from the bunk bed and refill my water?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, absolutely, go ahead." And he said, "Okay, thank you. I just didn't want you to get frustrated." And I thought, man, do I really respond that way? And when I reflect, the answer is yes. There are times, especially at that time of the day where it's nighttime, they should be asleep, but they're distracted or they're doing something that's kind of delaying the process. And I do respond with frustration and I'm impatient. And I've realized, especially as of late, probably within the last 2 weeks or so, that I respond very impatiently. I think some of that stems from maybe the way that I saw my father react. I also think that it has to do with just my character. If I know something needs to be done a certain way and it's not, I might feel impatient about waiting for whomever is involved to see their mistake and what the right course of action is. I don't necessarily have the pride in my heart or in my mind to say like I told you so. It's nothing like that. But I'm sure you can understand. And so in this scenario, I was not frustrated in any way. And he kind of wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to be frustrated that he needed to get up and go do that. And I just realized, man, I have got to control myself better. And I try to teach my kids, like, you can be upset. Last night, another good example. We were on our way home from church last night, and my oldest was frustrated with his younger brother, my middle son, because of something that he did. He offered him like a toy or something, but then immediately took it back. And he's only 3. Like, he doesn't truly understand when he says you can have this, what that might entail. And I told my oldest, I said, listen, it's okay to be frustrated because you were looking forward to something that didn't end up happening. Like that's a response that you're going to have. But your facial expressions, your body language, even how you actually respond to him, to your younger brother, you've got to control that better. That's not the way to respond. And so he can take, okay, I'm frustrated or I'm emotional or I don't like this, but I know that I'm not supposed to act that way. Now, is he going to respond 100% from now on? Perfect? No, absolutely not. I can't even do that. But I do expect that it will set some roots, right? And he'll be more grounded in how he should respond. And I have to get better at that. The problem with us adults is that we've already set in motion a course of bad habits that makes it much more difficult to respond the right way, the way that we know we really should. And so with him being so young, I'm able to start building the foundations at such a young age where he doesn't have bad habits that have to be changed or fixed. Instead, the habits he's building and what he is learning and reflecting on are already good things that he can just build on top of. And so I want to ask you, do you have the ability to reflect? It should be a pretty simple answer, in my opinion. You should always be able to look back and reflect on something that you did, something that you said, how something affected you, how did you respond to it? So the answer to that question should be yes. You have the ability to reflect. You can look back and say, I did this, I responded the best way that I could, or I responded the only way I knew how. Think back to when you were in school or when you were in sports or when you were at a certain job. Did you give it everything you had? The phrase, leave it all on the field. Did you do that? Right. But then what I want to ask you about is conviction. Because if you were to simply self-reflect, what comes from that? If you were to just simply replay it, what benefit do you have from an instant replay, right? Like ESPN. I don't think it really has much. But if you have a conviction that you can hold in that reflection, you now have a standard or an expectation or a base that you can bounce your response, your physical response, your emotional, your spiritual response against and hold it up against and say, was it where I wanted to be? Did I hit the mark? Right. So in my scenario, when I talk about how my son didn't want me to get frustrated, I now know that when something happens that he does, one of my kids do, not even kid related, but when they are around to see how I respond, I am convicted now to not respond impatiently because I know that they're going to be able to tie scenario, dad's response. And if they can tie that together, I have to work as hard as I can right now to make that tie not be something that they are scared of, or when they know it's coming, they're not going to hide from, right? Because if I'm unable to bridge that and respond in a more passionately, like patient way, I don't know if passionately is necessarily the right word, but a more patient way. If I'm unable to do that, there's going to come a day where my son does not trust my response to something that he feels convicted to bring up to me. And that is scary. I do not want that as a father. And you shouldn't want that either. You shouldn't want that with your coworkers, with your spouse, with your children, with anybody. You need to be approachable because you, as a man of influence, have that exactly that influence in every relationship you're in. And I hope that you're bringing influence to the table, not basically a brick wall where nobody even wants to approach you because they know that as soon as they approach that wall, it's there's nothing there. It's just going to be a complete dead stop, halt, whatever. And so, what are you convicted about? Have you actually set what expectations or standards or convictions that you need to have as a father? What should you be convicted about? As a husband, what should you be convicted about? As an employee, what should you be convicted about? Because if you're calloused to all of those roles in your life and you have no convictions, you need to get your heart right, right? You're taking advantage somewhere, if not everywhere. If you can work a day at work and then walk away and say, like, it was an okay day, don't take that for granted, right? Because one day you might wake up and that job's not there. And it's the same thing with your spouse or with your children. I'm not going to say, like, obviously we know tomorrow is never promised, tomorrow's never guaranteed, right? So you should treat every day like it is the last day that you have with your children or with your spouse. But what I'm getting at is if you can walk away day after day from a relationship, end of the day, you put your head down on the pillow at night and you think like, yeah, my wife and I fought, she'll say sorry tomorrow, or um, my children, like I might have yelled at them, but like they need it. They need tough love. and there's no sense of conviction, you've got to get your heart right. You shouldn't be calloused like that's normal behavior. Now, do your children need tough love? 100%. Are you and your spouse going to fight? 100%. Like it's right. You're not perfect. They're not perfect. It's just not, it's just the way that life is going to be. But if you have those convictions in place, when you do that reflection, you have the ability to say, I should not have responded that way. I should be the bigger man and go say sorry, or I need to go say I was wrong. Right. So without the conviction, you're not going to have influence. So I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to be able to reflect back every day. Do it every day. Make it a practice. Make it a habit that daily you reflect back. How did that conversation at work go? How did that meeting go? How did your conversation with your spouse go? Right? How did you act around your spouse? How did you act with your children? How did you react with all of those things as well? So do that reflection and then hold it to a conviction. Set the standards. And if you kind of like have the idea, like, yes, I need to be convicted about it, write down what conviction should be. Write down what that conviction should look like, what that standard should be. What do you expect of yourself? What do they expect of you? Because if you're not doing that, you're just literally going day by day with zero influence in all of these areas where you could be, I mean, expounding God's love. Last night I heard in youth group, disciple makers make disciple makers. And you think, what? The concept for you as a man, when we apply it to your life, is that as a spouse, you should be influencing your wife. And I'm not saying manipulate, I'm saying influencing. You should be giving her direction and guidance because you have a conviction about being able to follow God's word to know how to be guided, right? Same thing with being a parent. You shouldn't just be able to tell your kids this, that, and the other, and that's it. You've got to have a standard to hold that to, right? Um, and it's the same thing with at work, in sports, whatever it might be. You've got to have a standard, that conviction that you can hold whatever behaviors from reflection against and say, it was a good day. I did well today. God, thank you for helping me to do well, right? I can't do it in and of myself. I'm going to fail day after day. Thank you for helping me make it. Or, man, I know that I need to fix my response in that scenario. God, please help me. Because without being able to do that, who knows if there wasn't the conversation and the reflection and the conviction on being impatient with my oldest son, and it's not a consistent thing. I'm not always impatient. It's just random moments. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't know when to be more cognitive of it, and it could really affect the relationship in say 10 years from now. And that's what I don't want. I want to be my son's father, right? Like I need to be that, but I also want to be my son's friend in that he knows to come to me as a mentor, as a guide, to give him advice, to help him with things, to help him set goals, to help him achieve those goals. So it's not like I want to be a buddy with him and like not hold a father figure, authoritative figure. It's not that. I will hold my authoritative father figure as a biblical man should be doing, as a any man should be doing, but I do it through a biblical standard. But I also want to be somebody that he looks at when he's mature enough and he's making his own decisions and he is an adult. I want him to look at me and say, my dad is my best friend because he guided me the way I needed to be. He told me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. And he had his own convictions about how to be a father to me that passed down. And I'm convicted on how to be a brother, how to be a husband, how to be a father, and how to be a friend, how to do it, how to do ministry work, whatever it might be. And so, again, ask yourself, do you reflect on your day? Do you reflect after conversations, after any event? And if so, do you have convictions? Are there areas to improve? Or is your ego in the way and you have no standard? Ask yourself that. And I certainly hope that you have an answer. I certainly hope that you have the ability to accurately reflect and very intently set a conviction and hold your actions against that conviction to be able to say, today was a good day, praise God, or God, please help me tomorrow to be better than I am today. Be a better man. Be a better man than you were today. Tomorrow, be a better man. Live as the influence and the example that you need to be and that you're called to be. We'll see you next time.